In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to use reported speech. First, we're going to look at direct speech, and then learn how to change this to reported speech and how to form reported speech. We're going to look at reporting verbs such as say or tell, speak or talk, among others, to understand the difference between these verbs and when to use them. We use reported or indirect speech when we want to tell someone what somebody else said. So we want to relay what one person says to another. So for example, he said that he was staying in to watch Deadpool with a couple of his friends. So this is an example of a sentence in reported speech. Note that we usually use a reporting verb, in this case say, and we put that in the past, said. And then we also change the tense of what was actually said in the direct speech to, in this case, the past tense. In dialogue, the word that can be omitted, can be left out, particularly after the verb said. So we can say, he said he was staying in, or he said that he was staying in. Let's have a look at another example. Let's imagine that John and Gilbert were talking together during lunch. And John says, I want to learn more about reported speech. So this is exactly the exact words that John used. That's the direct speech. How are we going to change that to reported speech? In reported speech, we would say, John said that he wanted to learn more about reported speech. So let's see what has changed. In reported speech, we're likely to start with a proper noun, in this case, John, or a pronoun, he. Then we need the reporting verb, in this case, it's say. In the past, said, and that, we can say said that, and we change the verb in the past. So John said that he, that's very important, we need the object over there, he wanted to learn more about reported speech. A common guideline for reported speech is that the tense in the reported part moves one tense back. This is also called a backshift of the tense. So, for example, a sentence that was spoken using the present simple or the present continuous, when we are reporting that sentence, we would use the past simple or the past continuous, which is the verb in the ing. So, with verbs like am or is, we would use was. Are becomes were. Do or does becomes did. Have, has, both change to had in the past. Will, the modal verb, changes to would. Can changes to could, and so on. Let's look at some other things that John told Gilbert during lunch break. So John said, my brother went to Singapore last year. He met a lot of people on his trip. So how would we change this to reported speech? We have the noun, John, the reporting verb, said, the object, his brother. So John said, we can add that, John said that, his brother. The verb had been, so we changed went to had been, and the rest of the sentence to Singapore last year. The other sentence, he met changes to had met a lot of people on his trip. So we can combine these two short sentences together. We could say, John said that his brother had been to Singapore last year and that he had met a lot of people on his trip. Now, when we have a verb in the past simple, like knew, saw, had, met, talked. In the reported speech, we could either leave it as past simple or change to the past perfect, as what we've just done now. So we can say, John said that his brother went to Singapore last year. And he met a lot of people on his trip. Both are correct. So when we have a sentence in the past simple, in the direct speech, and we want to change to reported speech, we can either leave it in the past simple or change to the past perfect. Both are correct. Now, what about reported thoughts? The tense in the reported part moves one tense back when we are reporting thoughts or feelings. For example, I thought we'd go out for a walk. Katie realized that she had left her mobile phone on the bus. So now note that Katie probably didn't say in direct speech, I realized that I left my mobile phone on the bus. But when we are reporting, we are telling someone what, in this case, Katie told me. So I'm also going to report in a way that reflects the attitude or the emotion of the speaker. So we're saying that in reported speech, we normally change the verb. It moves one tense back, except for the past, where we can use the past simple or change to the past perfect. But there are cases when we don't need to change the tense. So these are cases where a situation is still true in the present. For example, the reporter on the news yesterday said that rainforests are being destroyed at an alarming rate. If we had to report that using reported speech, we could say the reporter announced that rainforests are being destroyed at an alarming rate. So in this case, the situation is still true to the present. It is still true that rainforests are being destroyed. So we can choose to use the present simple. In this case, it was the present continuous. Let's have a look at another example. Yasmin said, I want to study in Spain next year. We can report this by saying, Yasmin said that she wants to study in Spain next year. She still wants to go to Spain next year, so this is still true. So in these two examples, we could use the past form, but we don't need to change. Why? Because the situation is still true now. However, you must use a past form when there is a difference between what was said and what is still true now. So, for example, let's imagine that you met Tanya on Wednesday and she told you that Joanna was very ill. She was down with the flu. Today is Saturday and you meet Joanna at the gym and she's looking well and she seems to have recovered. So you tell her, I didn't expect to see you today. Tanya said that you were down with the flu. So in this example, it wouldn't be correct to say Tanya said that you are down with the flu because it is evident that Joanna has recovered and that statement is no longer applicable, it's no longer true. We're now going to look at modal verbs and how we change modals in reported speech. So as we said before, can would change to could, will becomes would, may becomes might. So let's have a look at an example. She can speak Italian well. He told me that she could speak Italian well. I will help you. In reported speech, we would say, she said she'd help me. I may come. She said she might come. When we have must However, it either stays the same in reported speech or we change it to had to. So Bjorn said that he must go, or Bjorn said that he had to go. Now, what about reported questions? To report a yes or no question, we use whether or if in reported speech. So, for the question, are you students? And we're going to report this. We would say, they asked us if we were students. Or we can say, they asked us whether we were students. Can I extend my stay? In reported speech, we would say, I asked if I could extend my stay, or I asked whether I could extend my stay. To report a WH question, include the WH question, so where, what, why, who, but don't invert the subject and the verb. What do I mean by this? So let's have a look at an example. Why are you late? She asked me why I was late. So I actually used why in my reported speech for the question. Not, she asked me why was I late. If I am reporting the question, I don't include the question mark at the end. Now it's not a direct question anymore. We are reporting what was being asked. And we do that by using the appropriate reporting verb, asked. Okay, another one. How do you know about it? They asked me how I knew about it. So if the one step backwards guideline is a bit confusing to you, you can try to look at it in a different way. Maybe it helps you more. Let's imagine that Fabian went out to the cinema yesterday with some of his friends. They arrived early, and so they decided to go for an ice cream. And Fabian said, I will have 2 scoops of the vanilla ice cream. This is what you need to think about. Yesterday was Friday. Today is Saturday. And I'm reporting what Fabian said yesterday. So is it still true now? And what is the natural tense to use in this sentence? Is it a past event or is it still applicable to now? In this case, it was a past event and it has no relation to the present. So we would say, Fabian said that he would have 2 scoops of the vanilla ice cream. Or Fabian said he'd have without the that. Fabian said he'd have 2 scoops of the vanilla ice cream. Now, what about orders and requests? How do we change those in reported speech? When we have an order, like keep still, we use the infinitive, which is the verb do plus the to do. So for the command keep still, I would say she told me to keep still. Now when we have a negative command, for example, don't tell anyone, he asked me not to tell anyone. So in this case, we use not before the infinitive, before to and the verb, not to tell. We're going to recap a bit by looking at reported commands and reported questions. An example of reported command. Close the door, please. I would translate this in reported speech as the teacher asked me to close the door. Open your luggage, please. He asked me to open my luggage. So we have the pronoun, we have the reporting verb, and the infinitive, the verb in the infinitive form. He asked, don't forget the object, me, to open my luggage. An example of a reported question, what do you do in your free time? In reported speech, this becomes, he asked me what I did in my free time. Why did you leave? She asked me why I had left. Okay, so how do you feel about the use of reported speech so far? You can go through any parts of this video, make sure you understand them and that you're comfortable with them before we move on to the next part.